Hello guys, welcome back. In this lesson, we get to talk again about this very important concept of material versus time, material versus development. And I say again because we have talked about it so many times. Lesson number 15 at the very beginning, then lesson number 43, and again, every time we had an opportunity, we kept reinforcing this concept. Now, the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video and take a look at this position. Evaluate it, see if you can come up with a plan, and of course, don't forget to consider at least 3 candidate moves. Now, it is the black pieces to move, and I'm going to trust that you guys actually are going to pause the video and work on it for at least 5 to 10 minutes. Now, if you actually evaluated this position and you did not consider, guys, the fact that the white pieces are behind in development, then you definitely have to go back to those lessons that I mentioned, number 15, number 43, because this is extremely important. Now, the other thing that I wanted to highlight here is that you should have noticed how the white pieces are putting pressure on that knight on e4. They have 2 attackers and we have only 1 defender. Now, with that in mind, then we go on to the candidate moves. And every time that I showed this to my students, first move that comes to mind is just bishop f5, keeping it simple. I bring another defender, and now I'm even setting up a little trick. If they want to capitalize on my hanging bishop, they could do something like knight b2 d2. Well, I'm going to simply go knight c3, discover attack on the bishop, and that's something also keep in mind. So these are very important ideas, but the reason why I'm showing you this position, guys, is to, again, I want to talk about this idea of material versus time. What to do when we're down material? And that's a question that you have asked a lot. And even though that's not the main focus, it's going to work for us for that as well. Now, let me show you quickly what the move was here for the black pieces. Here, the black pieces went pawn to f5. And of course, they're bringing support for that knight. And this should have been one of your top 3 candidate moves, guys. Now, if you calculate into it or not, that's a different story, but f5 should have come to mind. Now, what many people don't like about this move is that if you calculate just a little bit, you're going to see that they could do en passant. And you could go back to lesson, I want to say probably 7 or 9, I think 7, where we talked about this if you're not familiar with it. But once they do en passant, of course, we cannot take with the knight because the bishop is dropping. So we would have to take with the queen, developing the queen, connecting the rooks. But the most important thing is what I mentioned before. The white pieces are behind in development. Well, every time we deploy a new piece, we're getting ahead and ahead. Now, after this move, if they take, and this is what actually happened in the game, they take back, queen takes. Notice how, yes, we lost the pawn, but now all of our pieces, except for this rook, which could easily just come over and help us, all of my pieces are developed. Now, when I get to use this concept, I wish I could say that every time that I use it, guys, is because I sacrifice a pawn or I sacrifice a piece and I get into these nice positions. Now, the truth is that many times when I get into these situations is because I blundered and I dropped a pawn or I dropped a piece. So I have to get into this mode of getting my pieces developed quickly and get to attack, get to create complications. And you're gonna see how nicely Spielman did it in this game as the black pieces. But this is something very important to keep in mind. If I'm losing, this is exactly what I want to do. And if you saw our last stream, you're gonna see, actually, I think the very first stream, my opponent in the last game, he defeated me because even though he lost the pawn in the opening, he got into this mindset of complicating the game and he got me in trouble. Now, before we go any further, before I show you how the game continued, let me use this interruption to say this, guys. At this point, it's not so much about the amount of material that we have, and I know you know this, but it is about what the pieces are doing. Sometimes a knight, a bishop could be better than a queen simply because they are doing something very important. They're putting pressure on their king, they're attacking, and maybe the queen is extremely passive. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. Anything that we do from this moment on has to be an energetic move. For example, in this case, it is the black pieces to move, and we notice that this knight is being attacked. Well, I challenge you to pause the video again and try to come up with the best move for the black pieces. Notice that, again, the knight is being attacked. We have to be very careful with that. Now, if you pause the video and you thought of a move like maybe knight to e7 or knight to a5, well, we only do those moves if we have nothing better. But if we have the opportunity to do something more energetic, well, we should be going for that. Now, if you chose something like bishop f5, well, this is definitely more energetic, and I'm glad that you realized the queen is defending the knight at the same time. However, we have to be careful with these forks. The king is being attacked, and of course the bishop is hanging, so that move is not going to work. What did the black pieces do? Well, the move was actually bishop to b3. Now, why do we put the bishop on b3? Well, number one, the queen continues to defend the knight. Number two, the bishop is of course controlling this diagonal, so they don't have those forks on c4 and d5. And lastly, the most important reason behind this bishop move is that now the bishop is controlling c2, which is a very nice retreat square for the queen, but also we're controlling d1, and that's going to prevent the white rooks from controlling this open file. So very powerful move. It is a move that is hard to find or hard to consider, but the more we get exposed to this kind of ideas, guys, the easier they will come to mind. We have talked a lot about tactical patterns. Well, we got a little by little talk more about strategic patterns. Now, after bishop b3, the plan is simple. I want to find the right opportunity to bring the other rook in with a tempo and hit that queen. Now, at this point, after bishop b3, the white pieces did a move that I'm glad that I'm showing you this game, and I'm glad that this move came in because it's going to help us reinforce this idea. At this point, the white pieces did pawn to c4. Now, guys, if you know that you're behind in development, because you could be on the other side of the fence as well. If you know that you're behind in development, the last thing that you want to do is move pawns. You want to quickly develop pieces. Like in this case, if I'm white, I might be considering something like bishop e3, and then next thing you know, my knight is out. Now, I think here the white pieces, what they wanted to do was pawn to c4 so that the bishop is trapped. And now, not only are they threatening to do queen d5, but when the knight comes to d2, that bishop is going to be trapped. So again, maybe they're getting a little bit greedy and they're forgetting the importance of not falling behind in development. You don't know how many times, and I learned this the hard way, how many times I was losing games, and when I looked at the game, I lost because I was behind in development. My rooks were not connected, and so on. Now, after pawn to c4, of course, we do not want to do rook e8 yet. They even have queen to d5 with the same fork. So what the black pieces did was queen to d6. Now, look at this. We have, of course, mainly we want to control this fork. But if you think about it, notice how the black pieces are putting a lot of pressure down this semi-open file, and the bishop is there as well. This rook, when it comes over to the e file, well, we're going to be controlling even more squares. But now we need to control the d file. Now, how do we do that? Well, we're going to be using the queen. So queen to d6, and guys, this is such a nice strategic advantage. We're controlling way more squares on the board than the white pieces are. So definitely when you combine this with tactics that are going to come, no matter what, when you have more control of space, when you have more pieces developed, tactics are going to be in the air. So queen d6 is a very nice move, no rush to do rook a to e8. Now, after queen d6, of course we have knight b to d2, they're developing and they're trapping the bishop. However, now it is time to do a very natural move. We're doing nothing here extraordinary. These are moves that I know you could think of. You're in this position, rook a to e8 is going to come to mind. Now, after rook a to e8, notice how the queen has to go all the way back to b1. Yes, they developed the knight, but now the queen gets in the way. The queen goes extremely passive. If you look at all of these pieces back here, they're basically not doing anything right now. And if you compare them to our pieces, look at my rooks, look at my queen, look at this bishop, look at even my bishop is helping out. My knight is ready to jump over to the center. Now, of course, we have to be very careful. We have to calculate. We do not want to make any silly mistakes. So, and by the way, guys, I know that a lot of you might be asking, okay, why did he go all the way to b1? Why didn't he go something like maybe queen to g4? Well, queen to g4 is only going to help us continue to develop, to improve our pieces at the expense of that queen. Notice how the rook could be improved by hitting the queen. This knight at the right time could be also coming over towards the center at the expense of the queen. Or you could think of something more, a little bit more elaborated, like bishop to c2. This, I think, is the best continuation. And the thing is that I'm threatening now to even go bishop f5 and continue to gain tempos at the expense of that queen. So something to keep in mind. So the white pieces here just went queen to b1. And now, guys, again, we have to continue to be energetic. We know that the bishop is being attacked. Well, we don't want to be doing moves like knight to a5 unless it is really necessary. So take your time and see if you can come up with a very powerful move that the black pieces found here. Again, try to take 3, 4, 5 minutes and do not give up until you find something concrete. Don't be like, oh, I think I'm just gonna go, I think I'm just gonna move my knight to a5, or maybe I just sacrifice a piece. No, make sure that it makes sense to you. Now, at this point, if your intuition is not telling you, okay, this is a critical moment, you gotta think, you gotta look for candidate moves, then you definitely have to go back and review many of the lessons that we have had on candidate moves and how to calculate and so on. Here, candidate moves, of course, knight a5, we have to think about it, even if we don't do it, but also knight to d4. And think about this move. This is there's a very well-known tactical pattern here that if you don't know it, well, you're going to learn it here. So knight to d4 is a move that centralizes the knight, very powerful knight in the center. And of course, the knight is defending the bishop. But I know that immediately we're going to think of, okay, what if we go knight d4 and they take us? Well, we gotta visualize, guys. If the knight takes us on d4, then the queen comes in. And then we have to visualize what to do after the knight takes on b3. Now, at that point, the queen is on d4, bishop is on c5, the rook is on f8. All of those pieces are putting pressure on f2. Don't forget, this guy just left. We went knight d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and at that point the knight goes to b3. Now see if, without moving the pieces, see if you can find a very nice tactic. Again, very well-known pattern. If you don't know it, well, you're going to learn it here. If you cannot see it without moving the pieces, if you cannot see it in your head, well, give it a try anyways. It's going to help you improve your ability to visualize, and anyways, you're gonna see it in a moment. So here, guys, I'm assuming that you pause the video and you try to do it in your head. Now, the move I'm going to show you, I'm going to move the pieces, but first, let's try to do the whole thing in our head. So we have knight d4 again, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and then knight to b3. Now, at that point, I know that a lot of you thought of rook takes f2, and then if they take, we could take back, or actually, we could maybe do something faster. But the strongest, the fastest continuation is after the queen's on d4, then we just go queen takes f2. Of course, if the king takes, checkmate. But if after queen f2, the rook takes, then we have checkmate in one move with rook e1. Don't forget that this bishop is pinning that rook. Now, this is what we're talking about. Knight to d4. If they take, maybe knight to b3, well, we take back, or you know what? I'll look into this very carefully, guys. I think knight f3, pawn takes, rook f3, this has to be winning for us, because again, all of these pieces are doing nothing on the queen side. So we might have an edge there. Now, the line that we're looking into is knight takes d4, queen takes d4. And now, if they collect that bishop, we have queen f2 check. If they move, well, we get the rook, that's checkmate. And again, guys, notice how this works because of the lack of development. I have been myself on this side as a white pieces right now with that bishop that I never developed, and I got in trouble, right? Now, if they had instead, of course, taken the queen, well, we don't even have to take here. We could just do checkmate in one move. So that queen sack with the battery, queen sack on f2, and then using that pin to deliver checkmate is a very well-known pattern. We gotta know it, guys. We gotta be familiar with it. So there you go. That's what the black pieces had in mind. And look, before we go any further, let me go back, guys, to this very initial position here. Notice that after f5, every move the black pieces have done is an energetic move. They took us, well, we deploy the queen. They took on e4, well, we take right back. They take here, then bishop b3. That bishop is controlling the squares, energetic move. We're not doing something passive. Then pawn to c4, queen d6, activating the queen, controlling the d file, and after knight d2, we deploy the rook by hitting the queen. Queen goes back, then knight to d4. Everything is energetic. Now, in this game, of course, they did not take on d4. Instead, we have knight to e4. They're not going to go for the bishop. They know they'll be getting in trouble. Now, at this point, again, guys, I hate just asking you instead of telling you the plans, but I really think that if you try to find the moves on your own, you're gonna get more out of this lesson. So try to think of what you do next here as the black pieces. You're playing this in a tournament, this is your game, how would you continue? The first thing that should come to mind is, okay, this knight is doing a fork, he's about to get at least this very powerful bishop, and that's what they want. If I'm the white pieces here, I want to get rid of pieces. The less pieces, the less likely they are to get me in trouble. So my first instinct is to move the queen, but I gotta continue to look. What other options do I have? Well, I see that I could take the knight, but that's just going to be losing material. The queen gets active. Maybe that's not what I want. Well, another move that comes to mind is knight f3. That's an in-between move because it comes with a check. And just the fact that it's going to make them take with the pawn and expose the king, I like that. So in this game, they just went knight f3, pawn takes, and now queen g6 with a check. Notice how they simply got away from the threat with a tempo. Again, this is the main concept here, guys. We're down in material, but we are ahead in development, and we continue to play energetically to win tempos. So after queen g6 check, of course, the king is going to move over. Now, we gotta consider everything. We cannot just say, oh, they're gonna move the king. What else could they do? Well, they could move the knight to g3, they could move the knight to g5, they could move the bishop to g5. Now, anything like that goes to g5, we know that we could pin it. And I know, if knight g5, these two are going to be attacked, but that's going to be the same solution that we're going to give to knight g3. If knight g3, guys, well, the bishop is going to go to c2, and look at this queen. Now, the queen has to go to a2, and we could even just go pawn to b3. This is just really bad, right? So after queen g6, instead, they just go king to h1, and then the next move here for the black pieces, guys, even at this point, even if you play perfectly up to this point, it is so easy to just make a mistake. So we have to say, you know what, I know that we're winning here. I just need to continue to play energetically. I need to be alert and not make any silly mistakes. So again, we look at candidate moves. I know that we only look at candidate moves when we are in a critical position, but in this case, this is definitely critical. And one mistake, we could just let them escape, or we could even lose the game. So the bishop is still attacked. The first thing that comes to mind is, okay, what if I just move the bishop? But once we look at that, we gotta continue to look for other ideas. Well, what could it be an energetic move? Still, I gotta look into rook e4. Even if it's a nonsense move, I need to spend a few seconds on that move. I need to consider it. Okay, it doesn't work for me. They take with the queen, fine, but at least I considered it. Now, what else could I do? Well, how about rook takes f3? Well, I like that move. Now, if rook f3 and they take on c5, the same thing. We have bishop c2, the queen has to move, we continue. We keep these pieces outside of the game. Now, with those pieces out of the game, including the bishop, by the way, then we're gonna have one rook only defending that king, and then we have two rooks and the queen. Well, I do like this idea. So in this game, rook f3 was played, and now they did not take on c5, they just went rook e1, and now another powerful move that if you haven't found it, guys, if you haven't seen a powerful move, if it didn't come to mind already, then you should pause the video. Now, the move that we're looking for is, or actually the move that they did, is rook f2. Now, at this point, simple tactic. Of course, if they take, that knight was pinned, so we're gonna get only one and they're done. But guys, right now we are threatening checkmate on g2. Now, at this point, there's not much they could do. Notice how the entire game, this bishop did not play. Now, even at this point, if they go bishop to g5, well, our queen could easily go around, and we're threatening checkmate on h2. We're threatening to go to f3. They don't have a light square bishop. The point is that king is defenseless right now. I think in the game they continued with knight f6, and of course, after we take it, rook takes e8, then king f7, and that's the end of it. Of course, we do not want to take on e8, guys, because there's no need. After we go king f7, our king is safe, and we're still threatening to go checkmate on h2 or check followed by checkmate. So this last part, as nice as it might seem, is not so important. The important part, again, is how the black pieces went from this moment when they were deciding between pawn to f5, bishop f5. They actually evaluated the position properly, and they considered that giving the pawn up in exchange for compensation, guys, for activity, was going to be sufficient to win the game. Now, maybe you don't feel like this is, like I said before, maybe you don't feel like you are at that level yet, you don't feel like giving pawns up because then you cannot get it back. Well, at least leave this approach for when you just blunder a piece, just like I do. If you blunder a pawn, you blunder a piece, I just want you to remember to continue to be energetic. Now guys, you know how to find this game. I already showed you, so feel free to review it. I'm leaving the link also in the description. Feel free to review it over and over and over. Now, another thing that I wanted to say before we go on to do that other exercise that I want to do with you is there's one lesson, I think lesson number, let me go here quickly. I think it's lesson number 43, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go all the way back. Yeah, so lesson number 43 here, guys. If you review this game, I have it open here. This is a game where it was Kramnik, as you can see, Kramnik versus Kasparov. And they're playing against Indian defense, so it's going to help you also brush up on that opening that we covered on lesson number 85, I believe. And here, notice how after a5, we're familiar with that, controlling c5 for our knight to go, knight e6, knight c5, bishop g5. Let me just show you this part where after bishop d7, knight c5, and b3, Kasparov just did knight f to e4. Notice how they're leaving the bishop, they're allowing the bishop to capture the queen, and the game continued, of course, with two pieces for the queen. But Kasparov was able to win the game, not only because he's a genius, but also because he understood this concept of how it's all about what the pieces are doing on the board. It's not about who has more material. So feel free to go back to that lesson number 43, extremely important if you haven't watched it. And before I let you go, guys, since this is so important, besides going over this game, this position, I wanted to show you guys, if we go here, let me quickly switch, let me see, I think this is gonna do it for us. Okay, so here on chess.com, I wanted to use this feature where they have practice, right? Now, if you go to practice, you go to drills, and then is it attacking? Yeah, I think it was attacking development. So if you read here carefully, you're gonna see that it says, how does one win with a lead in development? The key is to attack and open lines. If you play too slowly, black will eventually, I guess I cannot read the rest, but eventually catch up. Okay, so that's what it is. So what they do is they give you this position where you're fully developed and you're supposed to win against your opponent. So try to be energetic, like I said before. Everything that we have talked about, basically, it is here. So what we said, we gotta play energetic moves. We cannot fall asleep, or they're going to develop, they're gonna get us in trouble. And in this case, notice that it's even easier because we're not down material. And here, look, you could leave it as intermediate if that's your level at this point, or you could make it more challenging all the way until the end. Now, guys, if you don't have access to this on chess.com, don't forget, you could go to other websites like Lichess, and you just go here to Tools, Analysis Board, and you could actually set up, actually, I think if you go to Board Editor, and now you could set up that same position. And then when you're ready with it, you could go ahead and just say, continue from here. So continue from here, play with computer, and then you get to choose which one you like. If you want to play the most difficult one, okay, don't forget to choose the side that you want to play on, and then you're going to be playing here against the engine. I chose 15 minutes. You could do unlimited or whatever time control that you like. But this is an exercise that I really want you to try it, and then guys, let me know in the comments if you were able to defeat the engine. It doesn't matter the level that you chose, just make sure that it's your level or higher. Ideally a little bit higher, because look, this is an extreme case. So guys, with that said, I'm going to leave it here. If you enjoyed this lesson, if you found some value in it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. That way you can access future lessons. And also, I will see you in our live stream next week.